My husband died suddenly at 68. At the funeral, a young woman approached me, crying, holding a little boy's hand. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said. "David was an amazing father." I had no idea what she was talking about. We never had children, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the life I thought I had before that March morning when everything fell apart. Hello, my dear listeners. Thank you for being here. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. I always find it fascinating to read which cities and countries you're listening from, and if you've lived through something like this, so don't hesitate to write a comment. Now please get comfortable. Happy listening. My name is Dorothy Brennan, but everyone calls me Dot. I'm 67 years old now, and I live in Augusta, Georgia, or at least I used to. Everything about my life has changed since the day my husband David died, and I discovered he'd been living a double life for nearly 3 decades. I was born Dorothy Ann Sullivan in 1958, right here in Augusta. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood where everybody knew everybody's business. My father worked at the textile mill, and my mother was a homemaker who took in sewing to make extra money. We weren't rich, but we had what mattered: family, faith, and a strong sense of right and wrong. I was the middle child of 5, which meant I learned early how to keep the peace and make myself useful. I was the responsible one, the one my parents could count on. After high school, I got a job as a teller at First National Bank of Augusta. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady and respectable. That's where I met David Michael Brennan in 1982. I was 27 years old, and I'd begun to worry that I'd missed my chance at marriage. Most of my high school friends were already married with babies. But my mother always said, "Good things come to those who wait, Dorothy. The right man will come along when the time is right." She was right about that. Or at least, I thought she was. David came into the bank one Tuesday afternoon in April. He was 28, tall and confident, with dark hair and warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He owned a small construction company, Brennan Brothers Construction, that he'd started with his older brother after their father retired. "I need to open a business account," he told me, sliding the paperwork across the counter. "And I'm hoping you can help me figure out all this banking nonsense. I'm good with a hammer, but numbers make my head spin." He was charming in an unpolished way, not smooth or practiced, just genuinely friendly. We spent an hour setting up his account, and by the end, he'd asked if I'd like to get coffee sometime. "To discuss banking options," he added with a grin. "Strictly professional, strictly professional." I agreed, though we both knew it wasn't. Our courtship was traditional and sweet. David took me to dinner at local restaurants, to movies at the old Augusta Theater, to Sunday services at my family's church. He met my parents and won them over immediately by helping my father fix the porch steps without being asked. He was hardworking, honest, and kind, everything I'd been taught to look for in a husband. 6 months after that first coffee, David proposed. We were at the river park, watching the sunset, when he got down on one knee and pulled out a small velvet box. "Dot Sullivan," he said, his voice nervous but determined. "I'm not fancy and I'm not rich, but I promise you I'll work hard every day to give you a good life. Will you marry me?" I said yes, through happy tears. The ring was modest, a small diamond on a gold band, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We got married in November of 1982 at Sacred Heart Catholic Church. It was a simple ceremony, with about 75 guests, family, and close friends. I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit me. David wore a rented tuxedo that he complained made him feel like a penguin. We danced to Endless Love at our reception in the church hall, and I remember thinking I was the luckiest woman alive. We started our married life in a small apartment on Walton Way. David worked long hours building his business, often leaving before dawn and coming home after dark. I kept my job at the bank and took care of our home. We were building a life together, one day at a time. In 1985, 3 years into our marriage, we started trying for a baby. I was 32, David was 33, and we both wanted a family. My mother had been dropping hints about grandchildren, and David talked constantly about teaching his son to use tools or taking his daughter fishing. But month after month, nothing happened. At first, we didn't worry. "These things take time," my doctor assured me. "Just relax and let nature take its course." But a year passed, then 2. By 1987, we sought help from a fertility specialist in Atlanta. The tests revealed that I had endometriosis, which was making it difficult, though not impossible, for me to conceive. We tried various treatments, medications that made me sick and emotional, procedures that were painful and expensive, and ultimately unsuccessful. Each negative pregnancy test broke my heart a little more. I'd see pregnant women at the grocery store and have to leave before I started crying. I'd attend baby showers for friends and cousins and paste on a smile while dying inside. David would hold me while I cried and tell me it would be okay, that we'd keep trying, that medical science was advancing every day. We'll have our family, he'd promise. One way or another, we'll have our family. By 1990, after 5 years of trying and thousands of dollars spent, we had to face reality. The doctor said our chances of natural conception were extremely low. We discussed adoption, but David was hesitant. "I want to try a little longer," he'd say. "Just a little longer." Eventually, we stopped actively trying. We never officially decided to give up, we just stopped talking about it. The subject became too painful. We threw ourselves into other things. David expanded his construction business. I got promoted to head teller and then to assistant branch manager. We bought a house in 1992, a modest 3-bedroom ranch on a quiet street. The extra bedrooms sat empty, a constant reminder of the children we'd never have. But overall, we were happy, or at least, I thought we were. David was affectionate and attentive. He called me every day from work to check in. He brought me flowers on our anniversary and my birthday. He held my hand during movies and kissed me goodbye every morning. We had our routines, Sunday dinners with my family or his, Wednesday night church services, Friday date nights at our favorite Italian restaurant, Saturdays working in the yard together. It wasn't an exciting life, but it was comfortable and secure. The one thing that did change over the years was David's travel schedule. His construction business grew significantly throughout the 1,990 seconds. By 1995, Brennan Brothers Construction was one of the most successful companies in the region. They were building commercial properties, office buildings, shopping centers. "I need to travel more," David explained in early 1995. "We've got projects starting in Savannah and Charleston. I need to be on site to meet with clients and contractors." "How often?" I asked. "Probably once or twice a month, maybe a week at a time." I didn't like it, but I understood. His business was our livelihood. And David had worked so hard to build it. I couldn't be selfish just because I'd miss him. So he started traveling. At first, it was once a month he'd drive down to Savannah on a Monday and come back Thursday or Friday. Then it became more frequent. Twice a month, sometimes for 10 days at a time. He'd call me every night from his hotel, telling me about difficult clients and construction delays and how much he missed home. "How's the project going?" I'd ask. Slowly, he'd sigh. "These Savannah clients want everything perfect, but we're getting there. Another few days and I can come home." I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? David had never given me reason to doubt him. He was devoted to me, to our marriage, to building the life we'd planned together. The years rolled by. The late 1,990 seconds became the 2000s. David's business continued to thrive. We paid off our house. We took modest vacations, a week at Myrtle Beach, a long weekend in the Smoky Mountains. We attended weddings and funerals and holiday gatherings. We grew older together, our hair graying, our routines deepening. My best friend Barbara Chen noticed changes before I did. Barbara and I had been friends since elementary school. We'd gone through everything together, first crushes, high school drama, marriages, the heartbreak of my infertility. She knew me better than anyone, sometimes better than I knew myself. We were having lunch in 2010 when she brought it up. "How often is David traveling these days?" "Same as always," I said, not thinking much of it. "Couple times a month down to Savannah." Why? "It just seems like a lot," Barbara said carefully. "Doesn't his company have project managers who can handle that? He likes to oversee things personally. You know David, he's a perfectionist." Barbara hesitated. "And you don't ever wonder?" "Wonder what?" "About what he's doing down there. Who he's seeing." I actually laughed. "Barbara, are you suggesting my husband is having an affair? David? The man who calls me every single night from his hotel room? The man who brings me back saltwater taffy from every trip?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Barbara said quickly. "I just want to make sure you're okay, that everything's okay." "Everything's fine," I assured her. And I believed it. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The way David became extra attentive after his Savannah trips, as if making up for something. The way his phone was always face down on the table. The separate credit card he used for business expenses that I never saw the statements for. The way he'd sometimes forget details of stories he'd told me about his trips, as if he couldn't keep his lies straight. But when you trust someone completely, you don't look for evidence of betrayal. You make excuses. You rationalize. You choose to believe the best because the alternative is too painful to consider. David retired in 2018, at age 68. After 40 years of building his company, he sold his share to his brother's sons and walked away with a comfortable pension and retirement fund. I'd retired from the bank 2 years earlier, and we were finally going to have time to enjoy life together. "What do you want to do with all this free time?" I asked him the day after his retirement party. "Travel," he said immediately. "I want to see the country. Take that RV trip we always talked about. Visit every national park." But we never did take that RV trip. David seemed content to stay close to home. We worked in the garden. We visited with friends and family. We went to Wednesday services and Sunday dinners. It was peaceful and quiet, just the two of us in our empty house. He still made trips to Savannah occasionally. "Consulting work," he explained. "My nephews need advice on some of expedited, the bigger projects. Just helping out the family business." "How long will you be gone?" I'd ask. "Just a few days. A week at most." And he'd go. And he'd call me every night. And he'd come home with stories about construction challenges and difficult clients, and I never questioned any of it. Until the 15th of March 2023, David woke up that morning complaining of indigestion. "Probably that spicy chili from last night," he said, rubbing his chest. "I'm getting too old for jalapenos." "Take some antacid," I told him, "and drink some water." He did, but an hour later, he was pale and sweating. "Something's wrong. My chest really hurts." I called 911 immediately. The ambulance arrived within minutes. The paramedics worked on him in our living room while I stood there helpless, watching the man I'd loved for 41 years struggle to breathe. They got him to the hospital, but it was too late. Massive heart attack. He died in the emergency room before I could even say goodbye. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone, and my whole world collapsed. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and funeral arrangements. David's brother helped me plan everything. My family surrounded me with support. Barbara stayed with me the first 2 nights because she was afraid I'd fall apart if I was alone. We scheduled the funeral for March 22nd at Sacred Heart, the same church where we'd gotten married 41 years earlier. I picked out David's burial suit, his favorite navy blue, the one he wore to our nephew's wedding last year. I selected flowers and a casket and wrote an obituary that captured 41 years of marriage in a few short paragraphs. I thought I knew everything about my husband. I thought I was burying the man I'd spent most of my life with, the man I'd loved and trusted completely. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. The morning of the funeral was cold and gray. March in Augusta can be unpredictable, warm one day, freezing the next. I wore my black dress and pearls, the same ones I'd worn to my mother's funeral 5 years earlier. Barbara helped me with my hair and makeup because my hands were shaking too badly to do it myself. "You're going to get through this," she told me, squeezing my shoulders. "1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time. You're stronger than you think." I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was made of glass, like one wrong move would shatter me into 1,000 pieces. The funeral home was packed. David had been well known in Augusta's business community. Former clients, fellow contractors, members of our church, neighbors, friends, they all came to pay their respects. I stood in the receiving line, shaking hands and accepting condolences, my face frozen in a polite mask of grief. That's when I saw her. A young woman, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and David's brown eyes. She was standing at the back of the room, holding the hand of a little boy who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Both of them were crying. I didn't recognize her. I assumed she must be the daughter of one of David's business associates, maybe someone whose father had worked for Brennan Brothers Construction. She looked vaguely familiar in the way strangers sometimes do. Maybe I'd seen her around town. Maybe she'd been a customer at the bank years ago. I forgot about her as the service started. The priest spoke about David's life, his dedication to his work, his commitment to his faith and family. David's brother gave a eulogy that had people both laughing and crying. Barbara read a passage from Corinthians about love. Through it all, I sat in the front pew, numb and dry-eyed. I'd cried so much over the past week that I had no tears left. I just wanted it to be over. I wanted to go home and crawl into bed and not wake up for a very long time. After the service, we went to the cemetery for the burial. It was a small, private ceremony, just immediate family and close friends. I stood by the graveside, clutching Barbara's hand as they lowered David's casket into the ground. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, the priest intoned. And that should have been the end. The end of the funeral, the end of this chapter, the beginning of my grief and healing. But as people were leaving, heading back to their cars, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, and there she was, the young woman from the church. Up close, I could see she'd been crying hard. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy. The little boy stood next to her, clutching her hand, his face buried in her coat. "Mrs. Brennan?" she said, her voice shaking. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I said automatically, the polite response I'd given hundreds of times that day. She hesitated, tears streaming down her face. David was an amazing father. He meant everything to us. I stared at her, confused. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" She looked shocked. "I'm Nicole. Nicole Brennan." The name meant nothing to me. "I don't think we've met." Now she looked genuinely confused. "But," I thought. Dad said. "Dad?" The world tilted sideways. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The little boy looked up at me with David's eyes, the same warm brown, the same shape, unmistakable, and said in a small, broken voice, "I miss Papa David." And that's when my entire life fell apart. I stared at the little boy with my husband's eyes and felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. "Papa David?" I repeated, my voice strange and distant. "What do you mean, Papa David?" The young woman Nicole was looking at me with growing alarm. "Mrs. Brennan, are you okay? You look like you're going to faint." Barbara appeared at my elbow, gripping my arm. "Dot? What's going on?" I couldn't speak. I could only stare at this stranger who'd called my husband Dad, and this child who'd called him Papa. Nicole's face had gone pale. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" "No," I managed. "I've never seen you before in my life." She took a step back, her hand instinctively moving to protect the little boy. "But that's impossible," Dad said. "He told me that you knew, that you'd always known." "Known what?" Barbara demanded. "Who are you?" Nicole looked between us, her eyes filling with fresh tears. "I'm David's daughter. I'm 28 years old. This is my son, Tyler David's grandson. He's 6. The words made no sense. David and I never had children. We'd tried for years, spent thousands of dollars on treatments, cried together over negative pregnancy tests, and failed procedures. We'd never had children. "That's impossible," I said. "My husband and I never had children. We couldn't. I have endometriosis." "We tried for years." I stopped, seeing the truth written across Nicole's face, the sympathy, the horror, the realization that she'd just shattered my entire world. "Mrs. Brennan," she said softly, "I'm not your daughter. My mother was Angela Brennan. She and David, they had a relationship in the mid-1992. I was born in February 1995, the year David had started traveling to Savannah regularly for business, the year he'd told me he needed to be on site more often, that the company was expanding, that he'd be gone for days at a time, the year he'd apparently gotten another woman pregnant while I was still mourning my infertility. "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, that's not possible. David, wouldn't we were trying to have a baby. We were devastated that we couldn't conceive. He wouldn't have." But even as I said it, pieces were falling into place. The frequent trips to Savannah that had started in 1995. The separate credit card I never saw statements for. The way he'd become extra attentive and loving after those trips, as if making up for something. The phone calls every night from his hotel room that I'd thought were proof of his devotion. He'd been calling from another woman's house, from his other family. "I think I'm going to be sick," I whispered. Barbara's grip on my arm tightened. "Sit down, Dot. Right now." She guided me to a nearby bench, away from the open grave, away from the workers waiting to fill it in. Nicole followed us, Tyler still clutching her hand. Up close, I could see David in every line of her face, the shape of her nose, the curve of her jaw, those unmistakable eyes. "I'm so sorry," Nicole was saying, tears running down her face. "I thought you knew. Dad told me. He said you two had an arrangement, that you knew about me and Mom, that you were okay with it. He said you'd chosen not to be involved in my life, that it was your decision. He told you I knew?" My voice sounded hollow, distant. "Yes, my whole life. He said you knew about me, that you just didn't want to meet me." Nicole sank onto the bench beside me, her face in her hands. "Oh God, he lied to both of us." Barbara was looking at Nicole with a mixture of horror and sympathy. "Your mother. You said her name was Angela Brennan?" "Angela Miller," Nicole corrected. "She never legally married Dad, but she took his last name anyway. She always said they were married in spirit, that the paperwork didn't matter." She laughed bitterly. "I guess now I know why they never made it legal. Because he was already married," I said flatly. "To me. I didn't know," Nicole said desperately. "I swear to God, I didn't know. Mom told me they were married. Dad told me you knew about us. I believed them both." Tyler tugged on Nicole's sleeve. "Mommy, why is everyone crying?" Nicole pulled him close, kissing the top of his head. "It's okay, baby. Everyone's just sad about Papa David." Papa David. This child had called my husband Papa, had known him as a grandfather. While I'd been sitting at home in Augusta, believing my husband was in Savannah for business meetings, he'd been playing with his grandson. "How often did he visit you?" I heard myself ask. Nicole wiped her eyes. "Once or twice a month. Sometimes more. He'd stay for a week, sometimes 10 days. He was there for everything: my first day of school, my graduations, my birthday parties. When Mom got sick 3 years ago, he was there every day. He paid all her medical bills. He held her hand when she died. 3 years ago, 2020. I'd thought David was making extra trips to Savannah because business had picked up during the pandemic. Construction boom. He'd explained that his nephews needed extra guidance, that he was consulting on several large projects. He'd been taking care of his dying mistress. "Your mother died 3 years ago?" Barbara asked. Nicole nodded. "Breast cancer. It was fast and brutal. Dad was devastated. After she died, he visited even more often. He said he needed to make sure Tyler and I were okay, that we were his responsibility now that Mom was gone." "What about Tyler's father?" Barbara asked. "He's not in the picture," Nicole said quietly. "It's been just Tyler and me for a while now, but Dad David, he stepped up. He was there for Tyler's birth, for every birthday, every milestone. Tyler called him Papa from the moment he could talk." I looked at the little boy. He was staring at me with curiosity now, his tears dried. "Are you my grandma?" he asked in a small voice. The question broke something inside me. "No, sweetheart, I'm not, but you were married to Papa David," Tyler said with the logic of a 6-year-old. "So you're his wife. That makes you a grandma, doesn't it?" Out of the mouths of babes. This child understood the situation better than I did. "It's complicated," Nicole told him gently. "Adults always say that," Tyler complained. Despite everything, I almost smiled. He sounded just like my nieces and nephews when they were young. A man in a suit approached us. I recognized him vaguely. Thomas Whitmore, David's estate attorney. We'd met once or twice at business functions over the years. "Mrs. Brennan," he said, his expression grave. "I'm very sorry for your loss. I know this is a difficult time, but we need to schedule a meeting to discuss David's will and estate. There are some matters that need immediate attention." "Can't this wait?" Barbara said sharply. She just buried her husband. "I understand, and normally I would wait," Thomas said. "But there are multiple parties involved, and time-sensitive financial matters. I really do need to meet with Mrs. Brennan within the next few days." "Multiple parties?" I asked, though I already knew what he meant. Thomas glanced at Nicole, then back at me. His expression made it clear he knew exactly who Nicole was. "Yes. Perhaps we should discuss this in private." "No," I said. "If this concerns Nicole, she should hear it now. I'm tired of secrets." Thomas hesitated, then nodded. "Very well. David's will names multiple beneficiaries. The estate will need to be divided according to his wishes. I have the documentation in my office, but the basic outline is this. 40% of the estate goes to you, Mrs. Brennan, as the surviving spouse. 40% goes to Nicole Brennan and her son Tyler Brennan. The remaining 20% is divided among various charitable organizations. The cemetery seemed to tilt around me. 40%? To her? Yes. David updated his will 18 months ago to include these provisions. He was very specific about the distribution. 18 months ago, September 2021. David had mentioned going to see his lawyer, said something about updating, beneficiaries, and estate planning. I'd assumed it was routine paperwork. I'd never imagined he was making sure his secret family was provided for. What exactly is 40%? Barbara asked. Always practical. Thomas pulled out a tablet and pulled up some figures. The house in Augusta, which is paid off, is valued at approximately $425,000. There are savings and investment accounts totaling $780,000. David's pension pays out a lump sum of $350,000 to beneficiaries. His portion of the business sale from 2018 was structured as an annuity that has about $215,000 remaining. There are also 2 vehicles and various personal property. The total estate is valued at approximately $1.9 million, give or take, depending on property assessments and market conditions. I couldn't breathe. David had been wealthy. We'd lived comfortably but modestly. I'd had no idea we had nearly $2 million in assets. And he'd left 40% of it to the daughter I didn't know existed. That was $760,000, $750,000 going to Nicole and Tyler. This can't be legal, I said. He was married to me. Legally married. She's the result of an affair. Doesn't that matter? I'm afraid not, Thomas said gently. David legally acknowledged Nicole as his daughter. Her birth certificate lists him as the father. He can leave his assets to whomever he chooses. The will is legal and properly executed. I witnessed it myself. You knew, I said, staring at him. You knew about her. I'm David's attorney. I knew what David told me in the course of preparing his estate documents. Thomas had the grace to look uncomfortable. I assumed you were aware of the situation, Mrs. Brennan. David indicated that the family arrangements were unconventional but mutually understood. He lied, I said, to everyone. To me, to her, to you. He lied about all of it. Nicole was crying again, one hand over her mouth. I don't want the money. I never asked for it. I just wanted my father. That's all I ever wanted. Tyler was looking between us, confused and frightened by all the adult emotion. Mommy, what's wrong? Why is everyone upset? Nothing, baby, Nicole managed. It's okay, but it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. My husband had been living a double life for 28 years. He'd had a whole other family, a daughter he'd raised, a grandchild he'd loved, a woman he'd been with for years. He'd split his time between 2 households, 2 lives, 2 versions of himself, and he'd died before I could confront him, before I could demand answers, before I could ask him how he could do this to me, to us, to the marriage I'd thought was solid and true. I need to go home, I said, standing on shaky legs. Mrs. Brennan, we really should schedule that meeting, Thomas began. Later, Barbara cut him off. Give her some time to process this. Of course, I'll call you next week. Thomas handed me his business card, though I already had his information. Again, I'm very sorry for your loss. Both of you, he added, looking at Nicole. Nicole stood as well, pulling Tyler close. Mrs. Brennan, I know you probably hate me right now, but I want you to know I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I looked at her, at David's daughter, his secret child, living proof of his betrayal. But when I looked at her face, all I saw was another woman who'd been lied to. Another woman who'd trusted David and built her life around him, only to discover it was all based on lies. I don't hate you, I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. You didn't do this. He did. Nicole nodded, tears streaming down her face. I loved him so much. He was the best father, I thought. I thought I knew him. So did I said softly. So did I. Barbara took my arm and led me toward her car. As we walked away, I heard Tyler ask Nicole, "Is that lady going to be my grandma now?" I didn't hear Nicole's answer. I didn't want to. Barbara drove me home in silence. When we pulled up to my house, the house David and I had bought 31 years ago, the house we'd made our home at, looked different, smaller, less real somehow. "Do you want me to stay?" Barbara asked. "No, I need to be alone. I need to. I don't even know what I need. Call me if you need anything. Anytime, day or night. I mean it. I know, thank you." I walked into my house now, legally 40% someone else's, and stood in the living room where David had collapsed with his heart attack just a week ago. Everything looked the same. The furniture we'd picked out together, the photos on the walls, our wedding, family gatherings, vacations, the life we'd built, except it had all been a lie. I walked to David's study, a small room off the living room that he'd used as a home office. I'd rarely gone in there, it was his space, and I'd respected his privacy. Privacy. What a joke. I started opening drawers, looking through files. Business documents from Brennan Brothers Construction, tax returns, bank statements but only for our joint account, not for that separate credit card he'd used for business expenses. Then I found it. A shoebox tucked in the back of his file cabinet, behind folders of old receipts. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Nicole as a baby, held by a woman who must have been Angela. Nicole as a toddler, sitting on David's shoulders. Nicole in a school uniform, missing her 2 front teeth. Nicole as a teenager at what looked like a dance recital. Nicole graduating from high school, David's arm around her shoulders, both of them beaming. There were birthday cards, all signed by David. "To my precious daughter on your 5th birthday. Happy sweet 16, Nicole. Love, Dad. Congratulations on graduating college. I'm so proud of you. Love always, Dad." School photos year after year. Report cards with David's handwriting in the parent comment section. "Excellent work, sweetheart. So proud of my smart girl." And at the bottom of the box, an ultrasound photo, dated September 1994. A grainy, black and white image of a tiny fetus. On the back, in David's handwriting, "Baby girl Brennan. Due February 1995. September 1994. That was exactly when David had started talking about expanding the business to Savannah. When he'd first mentioned needing to travel more for work, he'd known Angela was pregnant. He'd known he was going to be a father. And he'd come home to me, the wife who couldn't give him children, and he'd held me while I cried about another failed fertility treatment. He'd comforted me for not being able to give him what another woman already had. I sat on the floor of his study, surrounded by evidence of his other life, and finally let myself fall apart. I cried for the marriage I'd thought I had. I cried for the man I'd thought David was. I cried for 38 years of lies from 1995 when Nicole was conceived until 2023 when David died. I cried for the fool I'd been, trusting him completely, never suspecting, never questioning. And I cried for Nicole, who'd lost her father and discovered he'd lied to her too. And for Tyler, who'd lost his Papa David. And even for Angela, who'd loved a man who could never fully be hers. We were all victims of David's deception. Every single one of us. When I finally stopped crying, I gathered up all the photos and cards and put them back in the box. Then I carried the box to the kitchen table and called Barbara. "I need you to come over," I said when she answered. "And bring wine. A lot of wine. I'll be there in 10 minutes. While I waited, I went back to David's study and searched more carefully. I found bank statements for that separate credit card, the one I'd never seen. Thousands of dollars a month spent in Savannah. Rent payments to an apartment complex, utility bills, grocery stores, children's clothing stores, toy stores. He'd been supporting them. For nearly 3 decades, he'd been supporting a second household, and I'd never known. I found a life insurance policy I'd never seen before, one separate from the one through his business, $500,000 policy with Nicole listed as the beneficiary, dated 1998, when she would have been 3 years old. I found a file labeled Angela Medical with bills from 2019 and 2020, cancer treatments, hospital stays, hospice care. David had paid for all of it. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. The man I'd buried today wasn't the man I'd thought I married. He was a stranger. A stranger who'd worn my husband's face and slept in my bed and told me he loved me while maintaining an entire secret family 2 hours away. Barbara arrived with 2 bottles of wine and a box of tissues. I showed her everything, the photos, the bills, the insurance policy, the ultrasound. She looked through it all with increasing horror. I don't even know what to say. Neither do I. We sat at the kitchen table and drank wine and tried to make sense of the senseless. How did he do it? Barbara finally asked. Logistically, how did he keep this up for 28 years? He traveled for work? I said numbly. Everyone knew he traveled for work. It was normal, expected. No one questioned it. But twice a month? For 28 years? He owned the company. He made his own schedule. If he said he had to be in Savannah for a week, who was going to question him? I poured another glass of wine, and I trusted him. Completely. It never even occurred to me to doubt him. This isn't your fault, Barbara said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. Didn't I? Maybe if I'd been more suspicious, more questioning. No, don't do that to yourself. Healthy marriages are built on trust. You trusted your husband. That's normal. What's not normal is what he did. We sat in silence for a while, drinking wine, processing the impossible. What are you going to do? Barbara finally asked. I don't know. Meet with the lawyer, I guess. Figure out the estate. Sign whatever papers need signing. I looked at the photos spread across my kitchen table. And then I need to talk to Nicole again. Why? Because she's a victim too. She didn't know. She thought her father was an honorable man who'd been honest with everyone. She's grieving just like I am, maybe worse, because she lost her father and found out he was a liar in the same day. You're being very generous, Barbara observed. What's the alternative? Hate her? Blame her? She didn't choose this. She didn't ask to be born. She was a child, Barbara. All she did was love her father. I wiped my eyes. The same thing I did. Love a man who didn't deserve it. My phone rang. It was Thomas Whitmore, the lawyer. Mrs. Brennan. I'm sorry to call so soon, but there's something else you should know. David left a letter. Instructions for me to give it to you after the funeral. I can drop it by tomorrow if you'd like. A letter. David had left me a letter. Yes, I said. Bring it tomorrow. What time would work for you? Morning, 10 o'clock. I'll be there. And Mrs. Brennan? I'm truly sorry. For all of it. So am I said, and hung up. Barbara stayed until midnight, until I convinced her I was okay to be alone. After she left, I walked through my house, looking at it with new eyes. The bedroom David and I had shared. Had he thought about Angela when he was with me? Had he compared us? The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. Had he eaten my meatloaf and thought about Angela's cooking? The living room where we'd watched TV together every night? Had he been counting the days until he could go back to Savannah, back to his real life, back to the family he'd chosen? Because that's what it felt like. He'd chosen them. Chosen to spend his time and money and love on them. I was the obligation, the legal wife he was stuck with. They were what he really wanted. I went to bed in my empty house and lay awake until dawn, wondering how many other lies David had told, wondering what else I didn't know, wondering if anything in our marriage had been real, and wondering how I was going to face the rest of my life knowing that the man I'd loved for 41 years had been living a double life the entire time, and I'd been too trusting, too naive, too stupid to see it. Thomas Whitmore arrived at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning, carrying a briefcase and a sealed envelope. I'd been awake since 5, unable to sleep, running through every conversation I'd ever had with David, looking for clues I'd missed. How many times had he lied to my face? How many I love yous had been hollow? How many moments of intimacy had been tainted by thoughts of her? Barbara had offered to be there when Thomas arrived, but I'd declined. Whatever David had written, I needed to face it alone. Thomas sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Barbara and I had drunk wine and looked through evidence of David's betrayal just hours earlier. I'd cleaned up the photos and documents, but the shoebox sat on the counter, a constant reminder. Before I give you this, Thomas said, gesturing to the envelope, I want you to know that I had no idea David was deceiving you. When he came to update his will and told me about Nicole, he said you'd known about her for years. He said the family situation was unconventional but that everyone had accepted it. I had no reason to doubt him. He was good at lying, I said flatly. He had 28 years of practice. Thomas nodded, looking uncomfortable. For what it's worth, I'm truly sorry. No one deserves to find out this way. He slid the envelope across the table. My name was written on it in David's familiar handwriting. Dorothy, in his careful script. I stared at it, afraid to open it. What could he possibly say? What explanation could make any of this okay? Would you like me to step out while you read it? Thomas asked. No, stay. I might need you to explain legal things. I picked up the envelope. It was thick, several pages at least. Did you read this? No. David sealed it himself. I don't know what it says. I opened the envelope and pulled out 4 handwritten pages. David's handwriting, slightly shaky. He must have written this recently, maybe after his retirement, maybe even in the months before he died. I took a deep breath and began to read. My dearest Dorothy, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm guessing you've met Nicole. I'm also guessing you're angry and hurt and feel betrayed. You have every right to all of those feelings. What I did was wrong. There's no excuse for it. But I want to try to explain, even though I know nothing I say can make this better. I met Angela in 1994 at a construction site in Savannah. She was a nurse doing occupational health screenings for the workers. She was funny and smart, and she made me laugh. We became friends, then more than friends. I knew it was wrong. I was married to you. I loved you. But something about Angela felt like coming home. When she got pregnant in late 1994, I panicked. You and I had been trying for years to have a baby. We'd spent so much money, shed so many tears. And here was Angela, pregnant from our brief affair. The universe felt cruel. I should have told you then. I should have been honest, but I couldn't bear to hurt you. You'd been through so much, already with the fertility treatments and the disappointment. How could I tell you that I'd gotten another woman pregnant so easily when we'd tried so hard and failed? So I lied. I told Angela I was going to leave you, but I needed time. I told you I needed to travel more for work. I created this double life where I could be with both of you, where I didn't have to choose, where I didn't have to hurt anyone. Nicole was born in February 1995. The moment I held her, I fell completely in love. She was my daughter, Dorothy, my little girl. I couldn't abandon her. I couldn't walk away, but I couldn't leave you either. You were my wife. We'd built a life together. I loved you. I still love you, even now as I write this. I know that sounds impossible. How can I love 2 women? But I did. I do. I love you, and I loved Angela, and I love Nicole. I wanted all of you in my life. So I convinced myself I could make it work. Angela believed we'd get married eventually. I kept telling her I was waiting for the right time to leave you, but the right time never came. After a while, she stopped asking. She accepted our arrangement. She told Nicole that we were married in spirit, if not on paper. It was easier that way. I told Nicole that you knew about her, that you'd chosen not to be involved. That was a lie. I lied to her just like I lied to you. I'm not proud of it. When Angela got sick in 2019, I spent as much time as I could with her. She was dying, Dorothy. I couldn't not be there. Those last months, I held her hand and told her I loved her. And it was true. I did love her, even though I'd never been fully hers. After she died, I visited Nicole and Tyler more often. They were grieving. They needed me. Tyler calls me Papa, and Dorothy, being his grandfather, is one of the greatest joys of my life. I know you never got to experience that. I know you wanted children desperately. I'm sorry I couldn't give you that. I'm sorry I gave it to someone else instead. I'm leaving. Nicole and Tyler 40% of the estate because they're my family too. Nicole is my daughter. Tyler is my grandson. They deserve to be provided for. I know this will hurt you. I know it seems unfair. But please understand, they didn't ask for any of this. They're innocent. Nicole is a good person, Dorothy. She's a teacher. She's kind and patient and loving. She's a wonderful mother. She has your strength and your grace, even though you've never met. I think under different circumstances, you two would like each other. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. I just want you to know that I never meant to hurt you. Every lie I told was meant to protect you from pain, even though I see now that the lies caused more pain than the truth ever could have. I loved you, Dorothy. For 41 years, I loved you. That was never a lie. I'm sorry I wasn't the man you deserved. Please take care of yourself. You're stronger than you think. All my love, David. I set the letter down with shaking hands. Thomas was watching me carefully, probably wondering if I was going to break down. He loved me, I said, my voice bitter. He loved me so much that he lied to me for 28 years. He loved me so much that he built a secret family and let me think we were childless. He loved me so much that he made me feel like a failure for not being able to give him what he already had with someone else. I'm sorry, Thomas said quietly. He says he didn't want to hurt me. But you know what hurts, Thomas? Finding out at your husband's funeral that your entire marriage was a lie, that hurts. Discovering he had a daughter and a grandson you never knew about, that hurts. Learning that he told his daughter you knew about her, that you'd chosen not to be involved, painting you as the cold wife who rejected his child, that hurts. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where David and I used to take evening walks together. Had he been thinking about Angela during those walks? Planning his next trip to Savannah? Counting the days until he could see Nicole? What he did wasn't about love, I said. It was about him wanting everything without consequences. He wanted the stability and respectability of our marriage. He wanted the excitement and fulfillment of his relationship with Angela. He wanted the joy of being a father to Nicole. He wanted all of it, and he decided he could have all of it if he just kept everyone in separate boxes and lied enough. Thomas didn't argue. There was nothing to argue. The estate settlement? I said, turning back to him. How does that work? We'll need to go through probate, but it's fairly straightforward since David left a valid will. The house, vehicles, and liquid assets will be appraised and divided according to the percentages he specified. You'll receive 40%. Nicole and Tyler will receive 40% collectively, and the remaining 20% goes to the charities David designated. So I'll have to sell the house. Not necessarily. You could buy out Nicole's share with your portion of the liquid assets, or Nicole could buy out your share, or you could sell the house and divide the proceeds. That's something you and Nicole will need to decide together. Together. I'd have to work with my husband's daughter to divide up the remains of his life. When do we need to meet? I'd recommend within the next week or two. The sooner we start the probate process, the better. Fine. Set it up. I'll be there. Thomas stood, gathering his briefcase. Mrs. Brennan, I know this is incredibly difficult. If you need anything, or if you have questions, please don't hesitate to call. After he left, I sat alone with David's letter. I read it 3 more times, looking for something, an apology that felt real, an explanation that made sense, some sign that he understood the magnitude of what he'd done. But all I found were excuses. He didn't want to hurt me. He loved both of us. He couldn't choose. As if his feelings were all that mattered. As if my pain, Angela's pain, Nicole's pain, as if none of that counted because David had loved us all so much. I picked up my phone and did something I hadn't planned to do. I called Nicole. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. Mrs. Brennan, can we meet? I asked. Not with the lawyer. Just you and me. I think we need to talk. There was a long pause. Are you sure? I understand if you hate me. I don't hate you, I interrupted. But we need to talk. Your house or neutral ground. There's a coffee shop on Broad Street, Bailey's. Do you know it? I'll be there in an hour. I spent that hour getting ready, trying to look put together, even though I felt like I was falling apart. I kept thinking about David's letter, about his claim that Nicole and I would like each other under different circumstances. Maybe we would have. But these weren't different circumstances. These were the circumstances we'd been given: a dead man's lies and 2 women trying to make sense of his betrayal. Bailey's coffee shop was a small, quiet place tucked between a bookstore and a florist. Nicole was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. I didn't know what you liked, so I got black coffee, she said as I sat down. There's cream and sugar if you want it. Black is fine. Thank you. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. I studied her face, David's eyes, his nose, his jawline. She had Angela's hair and mouth, but the rest was all David. Looking at her was like looking at a ghost. "I got a letter from David," I finally said. "Did he leave you one?" "Yes. I read it this morning." Nicole's voice was thick with emotion. "He said he was sorry for lying to me, that you didn't actually know about me, that he'd made that up to make the situation easier. He said a lot of things." "Did he explain why?" "He said he loved my mother but couldn't leave you. That he wanted to be my father but didn't want to hurt you. That he thought he could make everyone happy if he just managed things carefully." She laughed bitterly. "Manage things? Like we were problems to be solved instead of people with feelings." "He told me he loved me," I said. "In the letter, that he loved me and your mother. As if that makes any of this okay." "My whole life, he was the best father," Nicole said, tears streaming down her face. "He came to every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every birthday party. He taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my homework and walked me down the aisle at my wedding. When Mom got sick, he was there every single day. He held her hand while she died." She wiped her eyes. "I thought he was a hero. I thought he was the most honorable man I'd ever known." "So did I said quietly. "And now I find out he was lying to both of us the whole time. He told me you knew about me and didn't want to meet me. I spent my whole childhood thinking my father's wife hated me, that she couldn't stand the sight of me because I was proof of his affair. I didn't know you existed until yesterday. I know that now. But growing up, I thought you did. I thought you'd rejected me." Nicole's hands were shaking around her coffee cup. "Do you know what that did to me? Thinking my father's wife hated me? I used to have nightmares that you'd make him choose, that he'd pick you and leave me." "He should have left," I said. "He should have been honest with everyone and made a choice. It would have hurt, but at least it would have been honest. Would you have stayed with him if he'd told you about me?" I thought about it. "I don't know. Probably not. The affair would have been bad enough, but a child? No. I don't think I could have forgiven that, especially knowing we'd been trying so hard to conceive. So he would have lost you, yes. And if he'd left you for my mother, he would have lost his business and his reputation and his entire life here, probably. So instead, he lied to everyone and tried to have it all." Nicole shook her head. "What a mess." We sat in silence, two women betrayed by the same man, trying to find our way through the wreckage he'd left behind. "The lawyer said we need to meet about the estate," Nicole finally said. "The will. 40% to me, 40% to you and Tyler, 20% to charity." "I don't want it," Nicole said immediately. "The money. I don't want any of it. You should take it. You're his daughter. Tyler is his grandson. You have a legal right to it, but it feels wrong. You were his wife for 41 years. The house is yours. The savings are yours. Everything should go to you. He wanted you to have it. He put it in his will. He also lied to both of us for decades, so maybe we shouldn't care what he wanted," Nicole said with surprising bitterness. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Fair point. We sat quietly for another moment. Then Nicole said, "Tyler keeps asking about you. He wants to know if you're his grandma. What did you tell him?" "I told him it was complicated, that you were Papa David's wife, but that things were confusing right now." She looked at me. "He's 6. He doesn't understand why Papa David had 2 houses or why I'm so upset. He just knows that Papa David is gone and that there's this other lady who is important to him." "I'm not his grandmother," I said. "Not biologically." "I know. But he doesn't really understand biology yet. He just knows that Papa David loved you and married you, which in his mind makes you family." I thought about Tyler's innocent question at the cemetery. "Are you my grandma?" He'd lost his grandfather. He was grieving and confused. And I was one more loss in his young life, another person connected to Papa David who'd disappeared. "Can I ask you something?" Nicole said. "And you can tell me it's none of my business if you want. But did you and Dad try to have children?" "Yes, for years. I have endometriosis. We tried fertility treatments, spent thousands of dollars, cried ourselves to sleep more times than I can count. We never conceived." "I'm sorry," Nicole said, and she sounded like she meant it. "Your father got you so easily," I said. "One affair, and there you were. While I was pumping myself full of hormones and going through painful procedures. He was starting a family with your mother without even trying. That must have been devastating when you found out. It still is. Every time I look at you, I see what I couldn't give him. What he had to go to someone else to get. Nicole was quiet for a long moment. You know what's strange? Mom used to tell me that Dad couldn't have more children. That something had happened and he was lucky to have me. I always assumed that meant he'd had a vasectomy or something after I was born. But that wasn't true, was it? Not that I know of. He certainly never told me he had one. So that was another lie. To explain why he and I were the only ones. To keep me from wondering why he never had children with you. Nicole looked at me. He lied to everyone about everything. I don't think there's a single person in his life who knew the whole truth. Maybe that's how he lived with himself. By keeping us all separate, he could be different people, with different stories. None of us knew enough to call him out. The coffee shop was filling up with the lunch crowd. We'd been there for over an hour. Two strangers connected by a dead man's deceptions. What do we do now? Nicole asked. About the estate, I mean. We meet with the lawyer, we go through probate, we divide everything up according to the will. I paused. And then we decide if we want any kind of relationship or if we go our separate ways. Do you want a relationship? I thought about it honestly. I don't know. Part of me wants to never see you again because looking at you hurts. You're a reminder of everything I lost, everything I never had. But another part of me recognizes that you're a victim too. You didn't choose this. You're not the enemy. I feel the same way, Nicole admitted. You're the wife I thought hated me my whole life. But now I know you didn't even know I existed, and I realize we're both just people he hurt. What about Tyler? What do you want for him? Nicole's eyes filled with tears again. I want him to know his grandfather loved him. I want him to remember Papa David as the good man I thought he was, not as a liar who destroyed lives. But I also don't want to lie to him the way Dad lied to all of us. He's 6. You don't have to tell him everything now. But someday he'll ask questions. And I'll have to figure out how to tell him that his beloved Papa David had 2 families and lied to everyone. We scheduled a meeting with Thomas Whitmore for the following week. And then we went our separate ways, 2 women trying to rebuild lives that a dead man had shattered. Over the next few months, I learned more about David's double life through the estate settlement process. The apartment he'd rented in Savannah for 28 years. The bank account he'd kept separate. The credit cards used for family expenses that I'd never known about. He'd spent nearly $2 million over the years supporting Nicole and Angela. Rent, utilities, groceries, clothes, school supplies, college tuition, medical bills. He'd been generous with his secret family. Meanwhile, I'd worked at the bank until I retired, contributing my salary to our household because I thought we needed it. I'd clipped coupons and watched sales and been careful with money because I thought we were comfortable but not wealthy. We'd had nearly $2 million in assets. We could have afforded better vacations, a nicer house, more luxuries. But David had been funneling money to Savannah instead. Nicole and I decided to sell the house. Neither of us wanted it. It held too many painful memories for me, and Nicole felt uncomfortable claiming any part of my home. We split the proceeds according to the will. With my 40% of everything, I had enough to buy a small condo and live comfortably on my savings and David's pension. Nicole used her share to pay off her mortgage and set up college funds for Tyler. She didn't quit her teaching job. She said she needed the structure and purpose. We saw each other occasionally during the estate settlement, always with lawyers present, always professional and civil. We weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either. We were 2 women bound together by a dead man's lies, trying to be fair to each other in an unfair situation. And slowly, something unexpected happened. We started talking, really talking, not about David or the estate, but about our lives. Nicole told me about her teaching job, about the challenges of being a single mother, about Tyler's love of dinosaurs and his fear of thunderstorms. I told her about my years at the bank, about Barbara and our decades-long friendship, about the book club I joined after retirement. We discovered we both loved mystery novels and hated cooking. We both preferred coffee to tea and dogs to cats. We both had a habit of crying during commercials with puppies. Under different circumstances, David had written, "You would have liked each other." He'd been right about that, at least. 6 months after David's death, Nicole called me. "Tyler's birthday is next week. He's turning 7. Would you like to come to his party? I almost said no. It felt wrong, inserting myself into this child's life when I wasn't really his grandmother. But then I thought about Tyler at the funeral, crying for Papa David, asking if I was his grandma. Yes, I said. I'd like that. The party was at Nicole's house, a modest ranch in a nice neighborhood with a small fenced yard. About a dozen. Children ran around screaming and playing, while exhausted parents supervised. Nicole introduced me to her friends as Dot, a family friend. Tyler saw me and ran over, his face lighting up. You came. Mommy said you might come, but I wasn't sure. Happy birthday, Tyler. I brought you something. I handed him a wrapped box containing a set of dinosaur books I'd found at a local bookstore. He tore into it immediately and gasped. Dinosaurs! Mommy, look! It's all about T-Rex and Triceratops. What do you say? Nicole prompted. Thank you. Tyler threw his arms around me in an impulsive hug. This is the best present ever. Standing there with this child, my husband's grandson, hugging me, I felt something shift inside me. Tyler was innocent. He hadn't asked to be born into this complicated situation. He'd lost his Papa David, and he was looking for connection, for family. I couldn't give him back his grandfather, but maybe I could give him something else. Over the next year, Nicole and I developed a cautious friendship. We met for coffee once a month. We texted occasionally. I attended Tyler's school play and his soccer games. I wasn't his grandmother, we were both clear about that, but I was someone who cared about him, someone who'd loved Papa David too. Nicole and I never talked about forgiving David. There was nothing to forgive. Forgiveness implies that the person understands what they did wrong and has shown remorse. David had taken his secrets to the grave. All we could do was try to move forward without him. Now, 2 years after David's death, I can say I'm okay. Not great, not healed, but okay. I'm 69 years old. I live in a small condo that's just mine, filled with things I chose because I liked them, not because they matched David's taste. I volunteer at the library. I travel with Barbara. We took a cruise to Alaska last summer, something I'd always wanted to do. Nicole is 30 now, still teaching, still raising Tyler alone. She started dating someone last year, a good man who knows the whole story and accepts her anyway. If you're listening to my story, I want you to know something. Betrayal doesn't always look like what you expect. Sometimes it's not a single affair or an obvious lie. Sometimes it's a slow, systematic deception that spans decades. Sometimes it's the person you trust most in the world living an entire second life while you believe everything is fine. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't make excuses for suspicious behavior. And remember, if someone is lying to you, it's not because you weren't enough. It's because they chose deception over honesty. David's choices were his own. His lies were his own. His betrayal was his own. I didn't cause it. I couldn't have prevented it. And I'm not responsible for fixing the damage he left behind. But I am responsible for how I move forward. And I've chosen to move forward with grace, with honesty, and with compassion for Nicole, for Tyler, for myself. I've chosen to build something real from the ashes of David's lies. It's not the life I expected. It's not the family I imagined. But it's mine, and it's true, and that's worth something. My name is Dorothy Brennan. I'm 69 years old. I'm a retired bank teller, a widow, and something like a step-grandmother to a child I never knew existed until 2 years ago. And I'm still here, still standing, still learning that it's possible to build new relationships from the wreckage of old lies. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments how you've dealt with betrayal in your own life. What helped you move forward? Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for keeping me company wherever you are in the world. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in their place? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share them with me in the comments below. On the screen, you can see 2 more life stories I strongly recommend. There are many more waiting on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.